Gregor Mendel was the first scientist to carry out experiments to understand how traits are inherited by offspring. He was a monk who lived in Austria and worked in the 1850s. Through his work, we will be able to answer our earlier question. If a person has an allele for blue eyes and an allele for brown eyes, what color are their eyes? His work involved peas that were each true breeding for one of 7 traits. There were 2 possible versions for each trait he studied. True breeding means that when 2 plants with the same trait are bred together, the trait is always observed in the offspring. Today, we would say that he studied peas with genes that coded for 7 traits, and that each gene had 2 alleles. True breeding plants have the same allele on both their homologous chromosomes for that trait. Note the 2 versions of each of 7 traits. The form would be gray and round or white and wrinkled. The cotyledons would be yellow or green. The flower color would be white or violet. The pod form would be full or constricted. The pod color would be yellow or green. The stem place would be the axial pods with flowers along or terminal pods with flowers on top. And the stem size would be long or short. Mendel crossbred parents that were each true breeding for the trait being studied, but one parent would show one version of the trait and the other parent the other version. We would say that he bred together plants which each had the same allele on both their homologous chromosomes, but one parent had one allele and the other parent had the other. The result was hybrid offspring that have both alleles, one on each of its homologous chromosomes. Hybrid, since they were a result of crossbreeding parents with different versions of the trait. The symbols we will be using are X for crossbreeding, P for the true breeding parental generation, F sub 1 for the first generation of offspring, and F sub 2 for the second generation of offspring. Mendel crossed a true breeding pea plant with purple flowers with a true breeding pea plant with white flowers. All the offspring had purple flowers. He then bred those offspring with each other, and those offspring had 75% purple flowers and 25% white flowers. 3 plants with purple flowers for every 1 with white flowers. One of Mendel's key findings, using a modern perspective, was that when a gene has 2 alleles, one allele is dominant, the other allele is recessive. If the dominant allele is on one or both of the 2 homologous chromosomes, that will determine the observed trait. The recessive allele has to be on both the chromosomes to be observed. Let's examine why he reached that conclusion. Geneticists use abbreviations to represent alleles. An uppercase letter is used for the dominant allele, and that same letter in lowercase for recessive alleles. For flower color in peas, P is used for purple and lowercase p is used for white. Note that we don't use W for white. Essentially, the lowercase p means that we are showing an allele which is recessive to purple. Pea plants have the following genotypes for the flower color gene: 2 uppercase p's, 2 lowercase p's, uppercase and a lowercase p, or lowercase and then an uppercase p. Organisms that have 2 of the same allele for a particular gene are called homozygotes. Organisms that have 2 different alleles of a gene are called heterozygotes. Please fill out the following table and check the next slide for the answers. Studying this chart, do you see that wherever capital P appears in the genotype, the result is a purple flowering plant? The only plants with white flowers lack uppercase p's. They only have 2 copies of lowercase p. That's why we say that capital P is dominant and lowercase p is recessive. And you can see wherever there's 2 of the same letter, so 2 uppercase p's is homozygous, and 2 lowercase p's are also homozygous, whereas if there's a mix, they're heterozygous.